I love NY. Maybe not true for Donte DiVincenzo. Big trade went down last night in the NBA. Karl-Anthony Towns heading to New York. Donte DiVincenzo, Julius Randle going to the Minnesota Timberwolves, as well as some other moving parts in there. DiVincenzo's inclusion may be a bit curious to Knicks fans, but it sounds like he wasn't exactly thrilled with what his role was going to be in New York next season. We're going to dive into that. I'm Trevor Lane, joined by Donnie Freeman. Make sure you guys subscribe. We're getting our subscribers up heading into the NBA season, so hit that subscribe button. Donnie, what do you think about Donte DiVincenzo? Word coming from Ian Begley of SNY that he wasn't super thrilled with his new role heading into the season, given the firepower that the Knicks have added and the fact that he was going to be almost certainly coming off the bench.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he showed what he could do with a increased capacity last season. So it's kind of interesting that they still doubled down and put him in a position where he was going to be coming off the bench, getting less minutes. And apparently, while the Knicks were trying to build the Nova boys, Donte wasn't all in on that. So that's a really interesting subplot of this. But I do understand where he's coming from. He finally had a breakout season. He had been trending that way recently for the last couple of years. And ultimately, he finally has it, and then all of a sudden he's going to be in a reduced role. So that does make sense. It's always interesting when this type of thing occurs for players, because on one hand you could look at it and say it's maybe a bit selfish, not team first, but I can understand, both sides of the coin.
Well, and he had just had such a great season for the Knicks. Actually set their all-time record in three-pointers made, and coming off a great season like that, hearing that you're going to go now move into a reduced role is not something that you're going to like. Still, as Ian Begley notes in his article here, he's not sure exactly why the Knicks gave in on giving up DiVincenzo, and that was a sticking point in these trade talks, that they have been after Towns for a while, and that the Wolves had gone after DiVincenzo in free agency. I believe it was John Krasinski of The Athletic who had that, and the Wolves, on their part, they weren't going to do this deal without Donte DiVincenzo in it. So he's a really important piece to this. Of course, people are going to focus on Julius Randle. They're going to focus on Towns, but the Wolves were not willing to do the deal without Donte DiVincenzo, according to John Krasinski. And then you've got, for the Knicks side, they didn't want to include him until finally they caved and gave in. Why do you think the Knicks made that decision? Let me ask everybody watching, did they make the right call, the Knicks, in including Donte DiVincenzo in this deal, or should they have held firm? Let us know in the comment section. But Donnie, do you think this was the right call by the Knicks to take a guy who hit big shots for New York last season, solid contract, he's going to be a bargain, and ultimately decide to surrender him in order to get Karl-Anthony Towns?
Yeah, they must really, really like the upside with what they think they'll have with Towns in the lineup. And that is, I mean, if that's the case, then I guess I understand it. But again, I do think that, like we mentioned last time we talked about the trade, I think that obviously Towns is the best player in this, but I think that the X factor in all of this is DiVincenzo. And if he can give the Timberwolves even a modicum of what he gave the Knicks last year, then the Timberwolves could potentially get much better. And one of the things that I think he'll help out a ton with is being able to play guard position with Ant if Conley's not out there, or sometimes he'll close in different positions, and also give them good shot making towards the end of games. That's one of the things that the Timberwolves actually struggled with, was their clutch time offense. And I'm really, really looking forward to more firepower for this team. I think that Randle is the big name, but he's got a lot kind of going on. We don't know if he'll be available to start the season, how things look for him. And I think that he's the one that's a little bit more of an enigma in terms of his fit on this team with Rudy Gobert, things like that. But when you take a step back and look at the DiVincenzo piece, it makes a lot of sense as to why they would, really want to get him. And if you're the Knicks, like I said, you must really, really like the upside putting Cat in this lineup, which I can understand, get you a little bit more size. You don't have the dilemma with trying to match up with the Celtics and, they're ignoring Julius wherever he is on the court. You have to guard Cat now. So I can understand that piece of it. So that's why ultimately I felt like both teams won this trade, at least in theory.
DiVincenzo is obviously a fantastic player. He makes big shots. You can see a shot going down here against the Nuggets. I like Donte DiVincenzo. I liked it.
It was ruining me, man. I'm sorry for that. It was ruining me. I was
Donte DiVincenzo is distracting DiVincenzo.
Yeah, my bad.
He's, hey, look, he's a fantastic player. He's fun to watch. According to John Krasinski, the plan now is that he is going to be a guy who fits in alongside Anthony Edwards in the backcourt, and that he can give Mike Conley a rest and be the point guard when Conley's out. So it's kind of a 3-guard rotation with Edwards, DiVincenzo, and Conley, which is interesting that that's the path they're going. I think first and foremost, this is very much the Wolves going all in. This is now Anthony Edwards' team. And we can talk about how much they love Naz Reid. And by the way, that was part of the math of getting this done, was the Knicks recognizing that if they don't do something like this, they're going to have to probably lose Naz Reid and or Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They're probably going to have to. That's just how expensive they were getting, given the fact they've got Rudy Gobert. Now they got to figure out what they're going to do with Rudy Gobert. They have to figure out the situation with Julius Randle, but they have a lot more flexibility moving into the future. You can see those player options for Naz Reid, Randle, Rudy Gobert. That's going to be a minefield for the Wolves to navigate next summer, but the long-term flexibility is much greater right now than it was with Towns on the roster. And they ultimately decided, look, we don't want to lose Naz Reid. We don't want to have to make that hard choice. We saw teams this past summer under the new CBA make hard choices. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope leaving Denver, Klay Thompson leaving the Warriors, Paul George leaving the Clippers. That's what's happening now. This is the effect of the new CBA. The Wolves said, we're going to have to make a hard choice next summer. Let's make the hard choice right now if we have a deal that's on the table that we think can open things up for us and can land us a piece, 2 pieces actually, in Randle, who they like a lot. And they think he's going to fit. I question how well he's actually going to fit, but apparently the Wolves think he's going to. And then Donte DiVincenzo, who they believe will be great in their backcourt. But one thing that's interesting is clearly this Wolves team is all in to win right now. They want to win right now. They want to go out there and find ways to compete and potentially win a championship. They had a team that was on the cusp of perhaps getting to the NBA Finals. To make this kind of a move right before a training camp, even with as talented as DiVincenzo and Julius Randle are, Donnie, should they be concerned at all about the lack of consistency, about what this might do to team chemistry?
Yeah, in terms of like them being on the cusp, I talked about their inability to win games down the stretch, and that was why they lost to the Mavericks. You would get into clutch time, and the Mavs would just bludgeon them at that point, and they weren't able to keep up on the offensive side because when it came down to it, you didn't have to guard Gobert. Cat sometimes was up and down. You didn't have to guard McDaniels half the time. And then you could just key in on Ant. And then Conley is sometimes, it's not that he's not going to give you what he can give you, but sometimes he doesn't look for the shot. So that was a big issue. So again, getting DiVincenzo, I know he's going to put the shots up. I know that he's going to be looking for the offense. And in terms of like chemistry, I don't really think that, there should be any problem with this. They've largely got the exact same roster. You have to kind of retool a little bit where the shots are going a little bit. And again, the Julius Randle health piece of it still obviously matters. But I expect DiVincenzo to be plug and play. You can put him out there and it'll just work because he's not like he's heliocentric. He needs the ball to do this or that. Sure. He's just going to go out there and he's going to just fit, like I said. But I think Randle's the one where he does need the ball in his hands a good bit to create. And he likes to do things that you could argue are pretty low efficiency with some of the way that he likes to create his own offense. But I think that's where things get a little bit weird. But I mean, you've got 82 games in a season to figure it out, right? So I think that they'll be all right by the time that it really, really matters towards the end of the season.
Now, I think one of the domino effects of this is Rob Dillingham. This actually takes, the Wolves moved up moved into the draft to get Rob Dillingham. This takes a lot of pressure off of him because now Donte, now it's really going to be, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker will be part of the guard rotation, but he can defend on the wing a bit as well. But you really have a 3-guard rotation that they're going to focus on with DiVincenzo, Edwards, and Conley. Rob Dillingham doesn't have to be that third guy. Now he's got a season at least, if not more, runway to kind of get his legs under him in the NBA before he's thrown right into the fire. So I think that's part of this too, is this is the Wolves recognizing that, hey, now Rob Dillingham doesn't have to be it would be great if he can be, but he doesn't have to be a contributor from day one. We can give him some time and DiVincenzo can do some really good things for us. And especially when you look, Donte DiVincenzo 2 seasons in a row now with 2 different teams who run 2 very different systems of 40% shooting from 3, that's got to give you confidence that the shot is sustainable and it's going to continue he's going to continue to knock him down at a high level. 15.5 points last season for the Knicks. He's a good player. He's a kind of versatile all-around player that can do a little bit of everything for you and that all teams need if they're going to have success. You need a gamer like Donte DiVincenzo. So I understand why the Knicks made him the sticking point for a while in these negotiations. I also understand why the Wolves said, nah, we're not doing this if we don't get Donte DiVincenzo in this deal. And ultimately, the Knicks gave in. I don't think they were getting Towns without doing it. The Wolves made that pretty clear. And so both sides wind up getting the player that they want. Last thing here, I mean, Donte DiVincenzo not being all in on the whole Nova Knicks thing and all of that. Is that a surprise at all that he was like, it seemed like fans are all in on this. We heard a few players talk about it. To hear that he was kind of like, meh, whatever, a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to misremember anything because I definitely didn't look it up, but I feel like he's had some difficulties like that in some of his previous stops as well, particularly after leaving Milwaukee. And like I said, I don't want to, misremember that, but I feel like I've heard something like that before with him. So it's not terribly like a terrible surprise if that is the case, if I'm remembering properly. But I mean, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, he was lights out last year. So you would, in that case, think you're going to get an increased role, not a decreased role, right? Like, so that's where things are a little bit weird. They bring in Mikal, who's obviously going to be the guy that they try to plug in as a starter there, and he's going to be getting more touches. And DiVincenzo's going to move further away from, the shot attempts and on-ball duties and things like that. So he's just in a weird spot, getting less minutes, and that's obviously not what he's looking for. So like I said in the beginning, I can understand that thought process. It just is unfortunate that they clearly thought that this is something he would be okay with, right? And it's interesting though, with him being a sticking point, if they just weren't able to pull this off, they would have just told him basically suck it up and we'll figure it out as we go. So that's pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, had this not gone through, DiVincenzo, I guess, comes into camp to some degree not happy, and Begley noted that while this wasn't like a huge problem or anything like that, and but obviously he said, and Begley noted that, look, like any competitor isn't going to want to hear, I'm going to play less, especially coming off the season of DiVincenzo did. Nobody's going to, this isn't like he's some malcontent or something like that. Nobody who's competitive is going to want to hear that. So there's that aspect to it, but just, it seemed like the Knicks were all on the same page and everybody's good and it's all, sacrifice for the betterment of the team and everything. And I don't blame Donte DiVincenzo for looking at it and saying, well, you guys added a bunch of guys who are going to play and take my minutes and my opportunities, and I gave you guys a ton last season. Maybe he is better off going to Minnesota, being in a 3-guard rotation with Anthony Edwards, with Mike Conley, and Mike Conley's getting up there in years. He's 36, 37, something like that. So now you get Donte DiVincenzo in a spot where, I mean, with the Wolves, he's playing, again, 25 to 30 minutes a night.
Concerns, or there have been in his career. I don't have any question about his fit. I think he's perfect there because he's the type of guy that you can plug in pretty much any roster that you would want to, because he's so versatile on the offensive side of the floor. He does have his defensive issues, but I actually really like the way that he was bodying up. They put him on Jokic last year, and I really liked the way he competed on that side of the floor.
Yeah, they probably don't beat Denver without him.
Yeah. Like, I thought he did an amazing job in that series. So in defense, like, if that's all you're going to ask, that's fine. So, like, I don't have any questions there. I just have questions with Randle. And like I said, if it comes down to DiVincenzo versus Cat, well, obviously, the Knicks would be getting better and then the Timberwolves would be getting worse. So it's a bit of a weird spot to be in. I don't really know how to call it. Last night I said that I thought that they were both winners. I still feel that way. I think it's not like anybody got fleeced or any sort of like huge difference here. But I do think both teams ultimately should at least be as good as they were last year.
My opinion was that the Knicks won and the Wolves are hoping they didn't get worse. I don't think this is going to make the Wolves that much better, but DiVincenzo is a good player. So if Julius Randle can come in and be like full 100% Julius Randle, which there was concern for a little bit that he wasn't going to be ready for the regular season. Now word is broken that he will indeed be ready for training camp. So that's fantastic. That's great news right there. Now Julius Randle, his wife, already on social media was posting about going to Minnesota. In fact, she tweeted out a Photoshop picture of Julius in a Wolves jersey. So clearly they're excited. But they need Randle to really find a way to click with Gobert. And I think that as much as the Wolves express confidence that they believe that's going to happen, I think it's a question mark. I think the Wolves, they stayed the same most likely. And that's their hope, is that they opened up long-term flexibility and didn't hurt their overall quality as a team. But we'll have to wait and see whether or not that's accurate. The Lakers and the Wolves kick off preseason play. Speaking of both teams, on Friday, we've got a preseason game, Lakers and Wolves. So this will be an early opportunity to get a look at the new look Minnesota Timberwolves, as well as that team everybody loves talking about, the Los Angeles Lakers. So that'll be exciting. But Donnie, this was great. Always enjoy breaking down basketball with you. And Donnie, our subscribers have shot through the roof over the last few weeks. We've had a bunch of people who've been super excited about that. And I think subscribing, I feel like we're off to a pretty darn good start here on the Basketball Bulletin. And I think that I can wholeheartedly advise everybody to hit that subscribe button and say that we're going to try to bring you the best content that we possibly can here.
Yeah, it's been so awesome. So everyone that has already subscribed, thank you. We really appreciate it. And we're going to keep things going. So make sure you subscribe for more content. And if you haven't already, definitely check out the video that Trevor and I did yesterday where we covered the trade in full detail.